The fluorescent lights of St. Mercy Hospital buzzed faintly, casting a sterile glow over the bustling emergency room. Nurses moved swiftly between beds, their shoes squeaking against the polished floors. Among them was Emily Carter, a seasoned nurse with a reputation for her calm demeanor and sharp instincts. She had seen it all in her 10 years at the hospital: car accidents, heart attacks, even the occasional bizarre injury, but nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold. It was a typical Wednesday morning when the paramedics rushed in with a new patient, a man in his early 30s, unconscious, with a deep gash on his forehead. Emily's heart skipped a beat as she caught a glimpse of his face. There was something eerily familiar about him, something that tugged at the edges of her memory. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on her job. The man was wheeled into Trauma Room 3, and Emily followed, her hands already moving to check his vitals. "What do we have?" Dr. Harris, the attending physician, asked as he entered the room. "Male, approximately 32 years old, found unconscious at the scene of a hit-and-run," one of the paramedics reported. "No ID on him, but witnesses say he was crossing the street when a black SUV ran the red light." Emily's fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the oxygen mask over the man's face. His features were sharp, his jawline strong, and his dark hair was slightly disheveled. She couldn't shake the feeling that she knew him, but from where? She had no brothers, no close male relatives. Her parents had passed away years ago, and she was an only child. Or so she had always believed. As the team worked to stabilize him, Emily's mind raced. She glanced at the man's hands, noticing a small scar on his left wrist. Her breath caught in her throat. She had a scar just like that, from a childhood accident. She remembered it vividly, how she had fallen off her bike and cut her wrist on a piece of broken glass. Her brother had been there that day. Her brother, who had disappeared when she was just 8 years old. No, it couldn't be. Her brother Daniel had vanished without a trace over 2 decades ago. Her parents had searched for him tirelessly, but the police had found no leads. Eventually they had given up, and Emily had been forced to accept that he was gone forever. But now, as she stared at the man lying unconscious before her, she couldn't ignore the possibility that fate had brought them back together. "Emily, I need you to draw blood for labs," Dr. Harris said, snapping her out of her thoughts. She nodded, reaching for the supplies. As she tied the tourniquet around the man's arm, she noticed another detail: a small tattoo on his inner forearm. It was a simple design, a star with a circle around it. Her heart pounded in her chest. Daniel had always loved stars. He used to point them out to her at night, teaching her the names of the constellations. Could this really be him? The rest of her shift passed in a blur. Emily went through the motions, tending to other patients, but her mind was elsewhere. She couldn't stop thinking about the man in Trauma Room 3. As soon as she had a moment to spare, she pulled up his chart on the computer. His name was listed as John Doe, but that didn't mean anything. If he had been living on the streets or under an assumed identity, it would explain why he had never been found. She decided to do some digging of her own. After her shift ended, she stayed behind, poring over old missing persons reports and news articles about her brother's disappearance. The more she read, the more convinced she became that John Doe was Daniel. But how could she prove it? And even if she could, would he remember her? He had been so young when he was taken. What if he didn't even know who he was? The next morning, Emily arrived at the hospital early, determined to find answers. She went straight to Trauma Room 3, but the bed was empty. Panic surged through her. Had he been discharged, moved to another unit? She hurried to the nurse's station, where her colleague Sarah was filling out paperwork. "Sarah, where's the patient from Trauma Room 3? Emily asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Oh, you mean John Doe? He was transferred to the ICU last night. His condition worsened, and they had to intubate him." Emily's stomach dropped. She rushed to the ICU, her heart pounding. When she arrived, she found him lying in a bed, surrounded by machines. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. She reached for his hand, her fingers brushing against the scar on his wrist. Tears welled up in her eyes. "Daniel," she whispered. "It's me, Emily, your sister. I don't know if you can hear me, but I need you to fight. Please don't leave me again." Over the next few days, Emily spent every spare moment by his side. She talked to him, telling him stories from their childhood, hoping that somewhere deep inside he could hear her. She also continued her investigation, determined to uncover the truth about what had happened to him all those years ago. Her search led her to an old newspaper article about a man named Victor Grayson, a known child trafficker who had been active in the area around the time of Daniel's disappearance. The article mentioned that Grayson had been arrested but had escaped custody before he could be tried. Emily's blood ran cold. Could Grayson have taken Daniel? And if so, what had he done to him? She decided to visit the local police station, hoping they might have more information. The detective she spoke to was sympathetic, but told her that without concrete evidence, there was little they could do. Frustrated but undeterred, Emily turned to the internet, searching for any mention of Victor Grayson. She stumbled upon a forum where people shared stories of missing loved ones. One post caught her eye, a woman claiming to be Grayson's ex-wife, who said she had information about his victims. Emily reached out to the woman, and after some convincing, they arranged to meet. The woman, whose name was Linda, told Emily that Grayson had kept detailed records of the children he had taken, including their new identities. She gave Emily a flash drive containing scanned copies of his files. Emily's hands shook as she plugged the drive into her laptop. She scrolled through the documents, her heart racing until she found it. A photo of a young boy with the name Daniel Carter written beneath it. Tears streamed down her face as she read the accompanying notes. Grayson had sold Daniel to a couple who couldn't have children of their own. They had changed his name to Michael and moved to another state. Emily's mind reeled. All these years, her brother had been alive, living a completely different life. And now, by some twist of fate, he had found his way back to her. But there was no time to celebrate. Michael, Daniel, was still fighting for his life in the ICU. Emily knew she had to act fast. She contacted the couple who had raised him, hoping they might have information that could help save him. They were shocked to hear from her, but agreed to come to the hospital. When they arrived, Emily was struck by how much they resembled her own parents. They explained that they had never told Michael the truth about his adoption, fearing it would hurt him. But now, with his life hanging in the balance, they realized they had no choice but to come clean. Emily returned to Michael's bedside, her heart heavy but hopeful. She took his hand in hers, leaning close to his ear. "Michael," she said softly, "I know you've been through so much, and I can't imagine how confusing this must be for you. But I need you to know that you're not alone anymore. You have a family who loves you, who has been searching for you all these years. I'm your sister, Emily, and I'm not going to let you go again." As the days passed, Michael's condition began to improve. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, but Emily knew the road to recovery would be long. She stayed by his side, determined to help him piece together the fragments of his past. Slowly but surely, he began to regain his strength, both physically and emotionally. One evening, as the sun set outside the hospital window, Michael turned to Emily, his eyes filled with tears. "I remember," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I remember you. I remember our parents. I remember everything." Emily's heart swelled with relief and joy. She pulled him into a tight embrace, tears streaming down her face. "Welcome home, Daniel," she whispered. "Welcome home." The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. Michael, now Daniel, began to reconnect with his past, meeting with the couple who had raised him and learning more about the life he had lost. Emily helped him navigate the complex web of emotions, offering her support and love every step of the way. But their journey was far from over. The revelation of Daniel's true identity brought with it a host of legal and emotional challenges. The couple who had raised him were devastated by the thought of losing him, but they knew they had to let him go. Emily, too, had to come to terms with the fact that her brother's life had been shaped by forces beyond her control. As Daniel continued to recover, he and Emily grew closer, forging a bond that had been broken but never truly lost. They spent hours talking, sharing stories, and rediscovering the connection they had once shared. Emily introduced him to old family photos and mementos, helping him piece together the puzzle of his past. But amidst the joy of their reunion, there was also a sense of unease. Victor Grayson was still out there, and Emily couldn't shake the feeling that he posed a threat to their newfound happiness. She knew they couldn't rest until he was brought to justice. With the help of the police, Emily and Daniel began to build a case against Grayson. They tracked down other victims, gathering evidence and testimonies that would hopefully lead to his arrest. It was a daunting task, but they were determined to see it through. As the weeks turned into months, Daniel's strength continued to grow. He began to explore his new life, reconnecting with old friends and making new ones. Emily watched with pride as he embraced his true identity, finding solace in the knowledge that they had finally found each other. But the shadow of Grayson loomed large, a constant reminder of the darkness that had torn them apart. Emily knew they couldn't let their guard down, not until he was behind bars. One evening, as they sat together in Emily's apartment, Daniel turned to her, his expression serious. "Emily, I need to do this," he said. "I need to face Grayson. I need to look him in the eye and make him pay for what he did to us." Emily's heart ached at the thought, but she knew he was right. They couldn't move forward until they had confronted the past. With a heavy heart, she nodded. "We'll do it together," she said. No matter what happens, we'll face it together. And so they prepared for the final showdown, their bonds stronger than ever. They knew the road ahead would be difficult, but they also knew they had each other. And in the end, that was all that mattered. As they stood on the brink of their greatest challenge, Emily took Daniel's hand, squeezing it tightly. No matter what happens, she said, we'll always have each other. And that's something no one can ever take away. Daniel smiled, his eyes filled with determination. Together, he said, always. And with that, they stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever fate had in store for them. For they knew that as long as they had each other, they could overcome anything. Life is a series of moments, some filled with joy, others with heartache, but all of them shaping who we are. Daniel and Emily's story is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope and love can guide us back to where we belong. Their journey is far from over, but together they've found the strength to face whatever comes next. If this story touched your heart, imagine what other tales of courage, love, and resilience await you on this channel. Every video is a new journey, a new emotion, and a new lesson. Don't miss out on the stories that could inspire, move, or even change you. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. By joining this community, you're not just a viewer, you're part of a family that believes in the power of storytelling. Together, let's uncover the extraordinary and the ordinary, one story at a time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. And remember, no matter what life throws at you, there's always a reason to keep going. See you in the next video.